Alexander Markov, welcome
Thank
to
you.
the 5th Schoenfeld International String Competition. Is this your first time in Harbin?
No, I was here at the previous one, right before the pandemic at 2018.
So, being in Harbin, what do you like about being in the city?
Well, it's got the influence of some Russian influence here. Some, old part has this architecture, and it has a beautiful, conservatory and amazing concert hall. So there's really strong musical culture here. So I think it's really excellent idea to have this festival in this part of China.
So, with the Schoenfeld competition that's here, and your experience as a violinist, how would you, or could you talk about the importance of this competition on the international map?
Well, I think it's important because in Europe there are so many famous competitions, and it's a very old tradition, and there's some well-known, obviously, in the United States. So China, it's important to have in this part of the world something significant as this competition as well. So I think it's really excellent that they have such a competition in this part of China.
Now, you were born in
Moscow,
Russia,
yeah.
in Moscow, and so let's go back in time
Sure,
now a little bit. So you come from a musical family.
Right. So my father, Albert Markov, he's a concert violinist, and he's a composer and a teacher, and he's still teaching at Manhattan School of Music in New York. And my mom, she used to work also as a violinist at the famous Bolshoi Opera in Moscow, and then she used to work at Lincoln Center in New York City. So I came from this strong tradition.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate because since I was very young, my father trained me like bulldogs.
So why the violin? What's special about the violin for you?
Well, it came extremely natural to me. Again, maybe it's part of it because my parents, and there is something about the violin as an instrument and my connection with this instrument from my early childhood that I felt extremely comfortable with. So unlike my academics, which were rather challenging and challenged, but the other part, the music part, was something that I could always connect, and violin specifically.
So you won the Avery Fisher
Career
grant,
grant, yeah.
and you're gold medal winner at the Paganini International Violin Competition. How did those competitions change the course of your career?
Well, to begin with, I think career aside, in terms of the professional side, the competitions in general are extremely important for musicians as part of their growing up process, regardless of the success that hopefully comes to any artist. But I think it's a very important step in growing up, so to speak, because you go through the tremendous emotional pressure when you come, on any level, by the way, not just the big international competition like that, but even some minor competitions that one would attend. There's always this emotional pressure and psychological pressure where artist has to test himself in reality, because when you stay home and you have friends, they say, oh, you're amazing, you're good, but then when you come to the real world and you go to the competition, you see other kids before you and after you have to really to prove it to yourself to begin with, the confidence. So it builds that stamina and confidence and your kind of attitude, if you will. And so I think it was very important. And of course, when you mention, Avery Fisher, of course, and Paganini, very important, of course, because then it opens quite a few doors.
Yeah, and so now that you're a jury member in this competition, and I know you've done other competitions, what is it that what you look for in young violinists? Anyone who comes out to the stage, what's your mindset as soon as they set foot on stage?
What I'm looking for is trying to go beyond the obvious logistical observations of his or her performances in terms of, there's some technical issues or even musical issues. I'm trying to go deeper and see a bigger picture about that specific artist, so anyone that goes. In other words, trying to see the talent behind it. Because sometimes, you could go it could be very talented, but for some reason, one morning, something is in your head, you don't feel well, and you make few mistakes, and jury sometimes could put some lower grades because of that, lower, what do you call it, lower...
Marks.
Marks, yeah, lower grades. You know, but I try to go beyond that and see maybe there's more to it, and vice versa. You know, because some competitors that do extremely well in competitions, but some of them don't do very well in their careers afterwards, many years after. And I think one of the reasons is because maybe sometimes they were looking just, you know, this formalities of playing all the notes right, which is not enough, because then, again in the real world, you want to make sure, you know, they really are true artists and they connect to the audience. So that's why every artist that comes, every candidate, I try to see maybe beyond all that, there is more to it that they do.
Yeah. So now, turning that into this specific competition, and without revealing any of your votes or anything, what's been your impression in this edition of the level of the competitors?
I think there are some very high ones. There are high level players that I've heard. Obviously without mentioning anyone, but yeah, there are some very strong players, and I'm very interested to know how they're going to do in the next rounds, because that's another interesting, because sometimes they go first, or even, you know, in the first 2 days ahead, and they could do a good job when they play in a smaller venue, but then I want to see them do that, let's say in the finals, a big concerto with the orchestra, where there's a bigger whole audience, so the whole level of your analysis and standards, you know, you observe them from a different angle. So I'd be curious to hear them on that next stages.
So what would you say makes, you're looking really for the whole package,
right?
In many ways, from playing the Paganini Caprice to, say, a Mozart sonata to playing a big concerto. What advice would you give to a young violinist going in who has to thread these many different styles, and also a brand new piece as well? What advice would you give them if they say, I want to enter the Schoenfeld competition?
I think my main advice is a few advices, okay? One, when you go to Schoenfeld competition or any other international competitions for that matter, it's important to realize that you really have to capture the attention of jury members and the audience, because you're not the only one. So to do that, this impact of showmanship, of musicality, virtuosity, everything, like you said, the package, is extremely important. Because one could come and play beautiful Mozart sonata, but you could see that his or her potential, it doesn't go beyond that, and there's a big concerto ahead, which probably is not going to translate well enough. So my main advice is the package, like you said. Just make sure, if you go to the next level, or finals there, make sure you showcase that tremendous virtuosity and showmanship and everything, almost arrogance on stage, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, great. Well, Alexander Markov, thank you so much for
thank
joining
you.
us, and
Thank you.
welcome back
Thank
to
you,
Harbin.
Chris. Thank you so much.